And I was so excited to draw everything on my iPad, and then I started like stenciling on them, and I realized it didn't look the same.
Yeah.
Even if I took a picture of their arm, even if I drew over their arm on the iPad and stenciled it out, it didn't flow with their body the way I wanted it to.
And I think that's kind of one of the cool things about where the tattoo industry is going. It's just becoming like accessible to so many people, like socially, to have tattoos. But also as the styles expand and you have a different variety of stuff out there, like there's little flavors for everyone.
So I applied, and I was like, if I get this, like I'm moving. Like this is the shop.
You're listening to the Eden Body Art Studios podcast, or the Eden BAS pod for short. My name is Colton James, and I'm one of the owners of the studio. I host this podcast with my wife and co-owner, Deanna James. The artists and clients we get to work with every day make Eden unlike any other tattoo studio on the planet. Some of them we've known for years, and some of them we just met, but we want to introduce them to you, the listener. The idea is for us and for you to get to know them a little better. Take a listen. You're going to love it. All right, Eden BAS Pod. I'm your host, Colton James. I'm flying solo today. Deanna's out of town for a little bit, so I'm hosting the show by myself, but that doesn't mean I'm alone. I'm here with our resident artist. I don't know why
Twice
I'm
in a row.
with artist, but I'm here with our resident artist, Taylor Phelps. Want to say hi to the people? Yeah, good one. So if you don't know Taylor's work, she primarily specializes in like large scale freehand florals. It's very fine line, black and gray, but she's super versatile. She can do micro stuff, large scale black and gray realism, even color realism when she feels like that. And she's super young. She's only 21 years old. She's been tattooing for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's definitely like one of the most talented artists I've ever been around. I'm super lucky to work with her every day. And she's also newly married, so you might know her as Taylor Joyner, but yeah, she's now Taylor Phelps.
Woo!
How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels awesome, especially having like someone down here, because I moved from Atlanta about a year ago, so having someone down here who knows me personally has been really awesome.
Yeah, so you guys have been like long distance the whole time. And David's actually in the studio today. I want to say hi, David.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, so yeah, Taylor's husband's name is David. So
hi, David.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, so how's married life?
Married life is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome, not gonna lie. I don't know.
Yeah, it's everything that everybody says, when they talk about married life, where it's a change. It's a kind of a changing experience having somebody else around. It's nice because you do have that teammate who's permanently there.
Yeah. I feel like especially like going from like long distance to married life, like I know when Deanna and I got married, it was like we already lived together. So I feel like when you go from living together to married, it's like not that much of a difference. But yeah, I feel like long distance to moving together or getting married, that's probably like a big change. There been any like challenges with that, or is it just been
I
awesome?
don't know. I feel like in a weird way, because like long distance, like, it's like hard. It's like, oh my gosh, this only works in movies, but it's like, you can't just sit down with someone and watch a show and not talk. Like anytime we were talking,
Yeah.
So I feel like it definitely helped our relationship. And now that you're here, it's just like chilling with your best friend,
Yeah, I feel like as somebody, like I've done long distance before, and I feel like when you long distance, it's super easy to compartmentalize your time. Like, okay, when I'm at home, I'm doing work stuff, I'm being productive. And then like when you're with that person, it's like, okay, I'm only focused on them. But when you move in together, it's like, okay, like there are parts of this where like we're not doing anything. It's just like, we're hanging out today. There's nothing on the docket. Like we'll be in the same room, but yeah, we're not.
Yeah,
like, we don't have
we're
plans.
Jay chilling. There's no plans.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. And I was super fortunate to be able to go to their wedding. Are you guys happy to have that whole thing behind you? Not in like a bad way.
No,
I'm sure you enjoyed
I know
the wedding.
exactly what you mean. The wedding was crazy. David did a brunt work of the planning, just being in Georgia, and then me being here. We had it in Georgia, so me being here was a little tricky trying to plan everything from halfway across the country. But
yeah,
having it done feels awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long did you guys date before you got married?
A little over a year.
Yeah, I'm thinking almost 2 years before.
And it was like long distance pretty much the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For at least that full year was long distance. So it was probably about eight or so months that we were dating while she was living in Georgia. Yeah. So we had a good base ground of how we interacted with each other before we went long distance.
Yeah.
So it was good.
And then we got used to not seeing each other all the time.
Yeah, and it was a good experience.
fun.
It was good growing. I think, coming back together from long distance is it's a nice thing because it's one of those things that we did foundation our relationship before we moved in together in the regards. And like what she was saying with the, when we talked, we really did talk. So it was like a whole different point, but
Plus
it's
the
been really
excitement of like, anytime you came down there, like here, or I went to Georgia, it was also so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I have noticed though, is it kind of still feels like I am just on a trip or a vacation, even though I've been here for about a month and a half now. So it's different than what you picture because it still feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when you're like moving into like the place that she's had for the past year, like, does it feel like you're home yet? Or does it I guess it just feels like vacation kind of for you?
I mean, yeah, it kind of still feels like that vacation thing, but the home is becoming more homey.
Yeah.
And I think it's the people that make that, like with her being there has really been like, okay, this is where I'm at.
For sure.
It doesn't help that her apartment does somewhat feel like a hotel room.
Yeah.
I used to make jokes.
Why?
Well, because I used to make jokes of how her decorating is and how she organizes everything is practical. It's very practical, but it's practical in the sense of like you walked into a hotel room and the TV remote used to be lined on the TV stand, perfectly perpendicular to the TV.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so interesting, but like,
It was like the first time you came down here, you commented on my TV remote being like lined right under my TV.
Yeah,
and now it
that's what
stays
it
like
was.
under one of my cabinets, so it looks a little less. But I used to be real OCD about having it like perfect.
It's like the housekeepers had like just come in and like set it there.
yeah, exactly. So you like walk into it and you're like, oh, this is here. And everything is just placed so practical. It's nice, but it's not something I'm used to. Like that's the thing about learning to live with each other is you probably felt that as well when you moved. Well, I guess you guys moved in prior to being married, but when you moved in together, habits have to change in some regard. So that was one thing I noticed.
For sure.
Yeah. So it still feels like a little bit of vacation. It's feeling a little bit more like a home because I'm adding to that. Like it's different walking into somebody else's space where they have
All their stuff.
yeah, especially like different things like where the silverware is,
Yeah.
It may
All
not.
the way that they've set out everything. It's like them. It's like you don't have any like fingerprints on it,
No, exactly. And as we're progressing in our relationship and as we're progressing with time down here, we're seeing like little changes and little gives in here, and I'm getting used to that aspect. And I think that's what's making it feel more like a home.
Yeah. I remember getting like really excited like the week that he moved down here, like just cleaning out my closet and like creating
Making
half
room
of the
for him.
space for him. And like, this is a lot of work, but that means David's coming, you know?
So it's been good for you. You let him move the silverware and stuff.
Oh no, the silverware is still where it's at. We did get new plates though. We got, oh my gosh, for
Dude, I bet
our
you
wedding.
got a ton of shit from your wedding.
Yeah, we got almost 40 plates as a wedding gift. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm ever going to use this.
From
but
the
we
same
got,
person or from different people?
From different people, but we had like some gray slate plates and then we got like white ones. And I'm usually more pulled towards like the white plate sets and whatnot. But David liked the gray ones. So I was like, okay, we'll do the gray ones. So
Nice.
You've got a little bit of something happening.
So what happened to the white plates?
The white plates are on the top shelf, and then we've got 2 boxes of unopened plates, which I don't know if they're white or gray, but they're like next to the door trying to get returned if I ever get around to it.
Yeah. I'll be honest, like from our wedding, like there's shit. I mean, we've been married for like almost 3 years, and there's shit that we've like either not used at all or used like a few times. Yeah. But it's cool. Like you just get all this stuff.
We got a Publix gift card, which for
There's no
people who
Publix
don't,
here.
there's no Publix in Texas, so it's just kind of living in David's wallet, and we're like, I don't know what we're
Whenever you
gonna
go
do
back,
with
you
this.
can get a really good sandwich.
True.
Or gas. Yeah.
True.
I do like that. Yeah.
Do you like their pub subs?
What's better, Publix or Buc-ee's? And there's only one right answer.
Well,
Ah!
Buc-ee's.
That's the right answer.
I said it for you.
Thank you.
My heart didn't mean it.
So Taylor's lived down here for a long period of time, and like for that whole year, and I'd visit her, and she never took me to Buc-ee's, like ever. So my first time going to Buc-ee's was when I packed my little Sentra up with my everything that I owned. I was driving this little Nissan Sentra with everything I owned, so boxes all the way to the roof on every seat. I had a little room for myself, but I drove down, and there was a Buc-ee's in Alabama, And I was like, I have to stop.
Well, you called me and you were like, should I stop? Like, I'm not really low on gas yet, but
Yeah.
Buc-ee's.
You're like,
called me
yeah,
in the middle of a
you have to.
tattoo. And I was like, yeah, hon, like, what is it? Like, what's up? And he's like, well, listen, there's a Buc-ee's. And I'm like, I'm working. That's really exciting. He goes, yeah, but let me tell you about it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
To be fair, like Buc-ee's, it's like a road trip destination. And like,
Oh, yeah.
like if you're in Texas, obviously there's like a few major cities here. So, you know, you might drive to Houston or Austin and there's like always like a Buc-ee's on the way. So it's like, if you live like in Frisco or McKinney, like it would be out of the way.
Yeah,
to,
it's
you know,
about like 30
drive
to
up
40
there.
minutes.
Yeah, but
Worth it.
But like if you're driving by Buc-ee's, you're I think you're legally obligated to stop at the Buc-ee's if you're a Texan.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
sure you're
I can
right.
tell you that, like, when I did stop at Buc-ee's, it was my first experience. I walked in, and she's not wrong. I called everybody. I was like, this place is incredible.
yeah, and you can't like explain it to people. Like
You're
yeah,
like, listen,
you just have to experience
100
it.
gas pumps.
Yeah.
Picture it. And they're like,
Yeah,
what?
but also the
Cool.
inside, I can't explain it.
That's what got me
Words
was
aren't
the
gonna do it
inside. I was
justice.
walking through, and I was like, this isn't a gas station.
You're
No,
like, we've
this
got a
is
restaurant.
an
we've got-
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's an experience.
Yeah, it was transcending in some regard. I like when I'm saying I called everybody, I stopped and I was like, all right,
yeah.
Taylor. I called my brother. I was like, dude, have you been to Buc-ee's before? And he was like, dude, I take the trip all the time.
Your great aunt's cousin.
Oh, I was like,
People you haven't talked to in
Dude.
years.
Yeah.
They're like, who is this?
they have salsa.
Random numbers.
They have fudge.
You can
they have
get fudge.
brisket. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, aside from Buc-ee's, how are you like in Texas?
Texas is very different than Georgia. The biggest regard and like the sense of like the greenery. Like Georgia is very hilly, lots of tall trees.
Texas is not.
Texas is not. So that's been the biggest transition for myself. Is like when I look out the window and I can see 4 miles down the road has been. It's beautiful. That's the thing. That's the best way to put it. When people say Texas sky, they really mean it. And the reason why is you can see so much of the sky at any given time.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect. People said move to Texas because it's warm. So far, I've been in Texas. It's freezing.
Okay, well, you got here like a month ago.
Yeah, but also the first week I moved here, we had a snowstorm. And then it was like the week before he moved down here, snowstorm.
You guys came here on a bad year.
I
all
get
right.
2 years.
Yeah, we just happen to have 2 catastrophic snowstorms, but it does get warm, and I don't know. I feel like it's probably as warm as Georgia. It might be just drier.
For sure,
Yeah.
drier. Like I think Texas temperature wise it's warmer, but because it's not humid, like it feels about the same as Georgia, minus the stickiness.
And how long have you guys been married now? Like a month?
Yeah, a little over a month.
Yeah, we just celebrated our first month on
With
April
being
3rd.
sick.
Congrats.
With being sick. That's a true statement.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, been married a month. What's next for you guys?
We were talking about getting a dog.
Dog.
Yeah.
I want a dog so bad.
So we did talk about getting a dog here soon.
Sorry.
Just kidding.
And then other than that, though, yeah. So I think one of the biggest things is like just doing the day by day. One of the things that you see when you're dating is that you guys are always going out and there's adventures, right? You have that date where you're going out bowling, movie theaters, things like that. But whenever you're married, you don't necessarily get that as much. It's a lot more downtime. So the day by day of trying to bring that into it, where
Yeah, I think being intentional about like date nights and whatnot, because it's easy to get lazy and just kind of hang out and watch shows, but
make some
exciting
fancy
stuff.
dinners.
True.
Yeah, do that. Really, that's the biggest thing is just make every day a unique day. So
Yeah. You guys have any like big future plans? You think you're going to stay in Texas for a while, or?
I mean, yeah, probably stay in Texas for a good while, but future a house maybe once the market cools off a little bit.
If
We've
it
been
ever
looking for
cools
the
off,
past
yeah.
like year, but it's been a
Yeah, it's
doozy.
tough right now. Yep. Well, cool. Yeah, I guess that's about all my married questions. David, you want to stay on, or?
no, you're good. I'll take off. I'm going to listen in though.
Cool. Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Well, thank you for having me, man. So I'll see you guys soon.
Yeah.
Bye, David.
All right, so yeah, shifting the focus over to Taylor. A little backstory on when she started working for us. She was actually like one of the very first artists that we hired when we started Eden. So kind of the backstory on like when we got started. We decided that we wanted to open a shop like very late 2019. It was like December, and Deanna had just put out like on our Instagram, hey, looking for artists. send an email, and we love to interview you. And so, yeah, Taylor reached out to us. And she was super young at the time. She was, 19. We really liked her portfolio. And that was kind of like, before the pandemic hit though. So then like the pandemic happened and it took us, I think we probably interviewed you in like April of 2020.
Yeah. It was pretty early on.
Yeah. But I remember like doing quarantine stuff, and Deanna was like, all right, it's time to get on the FaceTime. I was like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then after that, like it, with the pandemic and stuff, it took us like a while to open the studio. So we found the place like in November of 2020, and then we didn't open until like January. So like Taylor's been with us like since like the very beginning. And obviously like being so young and moving like from Atlanta, that's like a crazy leap of faith right there. And you had just started your like tattoo career. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what that entailed or like how that was for you?
Yeah. I mean, I like from the start of my apprenticeship or like when we interviewed?
Yeah. Like when we interviewed. Yeah. Just the process of like moving across the country.
Yeah. I had followed Deanna for like ever, like being a baby tatter, the first thing you do, I think, at least for me, was watch Ink Master, just to kind of like get a sense, even though it's not quite realistic. But I had followed Deanna and like forever, and I saw that she was posting, and I sent in an interview, and I was so nervous because I was still an apprentice at like, a street shop. So I was like, there's no way. And then you emailed me back, and I was like, holy crap. I got so excited, and I immediately went through my Instagram and deleted all the tattoos that I did not think, like, I was like, she can't see this. This is not something I'm proud of it anymore, And then I got really excited, and I started doing like more tattoos, and then we got on the interview, and I was like shaking. Like I was so nervous. I remember going downstairs to like my dad's office, and I set it up on his screen, and then I had like lighting, like a lamp next to me, and I'd like put up my hair and did my makeup. I'm like, look presentable, Taylor, and I had just gotten back from work of like, a long day, and I got down there and I was so excited, and we interviewed, and it wasn't even felt short, but I think that's just because my adrenaline was pumping.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure the last thing I said, you guys were like, yeah, we'd love to have you on. And I go, I'm going to go cry. I went upstairs and like tears in my eyes. I was like, Dad, like, I got it, And I mean, from there, it was just kind of like pandemic and a waiting game, seeing what was happening, looking at different apartments. That was right when I left the shop that I apprenticed at. Mm-hmm. So with the pandemic, with not being there, I kind of started doing guest spots at different places because I knew I wanted to learn more, The more, like, the wider your reach, the more you're going to learn. So just jumping around to different shops, kind of inhaling as much information as I could so I didn't come here just completely stupid and not knowing anything,
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely remember like your interview impressed us a lot. I don't remember when you said I have to go cry.
Yeah.
I was like, we didn't even discuss it with Deanna. It's like it went so well. I was like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you're pretty much like what we're looking for. So, and I think you said something like what, really? And I was like, yeah, yeah, dude.
Yeah, I was so nervous. I felt like it went really good up until the end, and then my excitement bubbled over, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go cry, and then I was like, Taylor, why are you saying things out loud that you're thinking?
Yeah, no, it went super good. Yeah, so can you kind of talk us through like what would make you like make such a big move like across the country?
So in my apprenticeship, it taught me a lot. I knew I wanted to be in a different shop, So I remember I had a couple different like shops that I was talking to that I was able to work at pretty much. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was like, just wait, just hold off, the perfect shop's going to come up. I don't know what it is, but it's going to happen. So I remember like just keeping different connections in the Atlanta area with different shops that I was talking to. And then I saw Deanna's post, and I was like, I have to apply because like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take,
Yeah.
So I applied, and I was like, if I get this, like I'm moving, like this is the shop, like I want to be here so bad. And then, the rest is history. We wound up down here, and Mom grew up in Dallas too. So she was like super here for it. Any excuse to come down here, she's taken it.
Yeah. And obviously your parents were like pretty supportive of the whole thing.
Oh yeah. My mom and my dad have been like from the beginning, like even when I, decided to tattoo, and I was like planning on going to college at the time. I didn't know exactly what for. I remember being approached with kind of like the idea of tattooing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. It was something that I kind of wanted to pursue, but I was scared.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because it wasn't a clear path forward and it wasn't something that I knew a whole lot about. And so my dad was kind of the one who convinced me to do it, you know, and he was like, hey, like, it's an open door. Like, you know, you might as well go in and try it. You know, it's something that, you know, I know you like art, like you're probably going to do well at, you know, and if you don't, like, college is always another opportunity that you can do, but, you know, go and do the thing that you want to do. No matter how much it scares you. And I was like, shoot, okay. And I was in the shop next week, you know?
Dang.
So,
yeah. And that move, I feel like, especially like, because it's similar to like the age you were, it's kind of similar to like going to college out of state, you know? Like
that's kind of what it felt like, especially. So I started tattooing while I was in high school. My first tattoo was a month before my 18th birthday. So I was like very like school oriented. So going into like the tattoo world and like, I'm immediately like taking notes, like while Dusty, my boss, was tattooing, like I was sitting there like taking notes on every little tiny thing that he said or did, you know, and I was just like going home and doing like research, like homework, you know, and then learning how to build machines and doing all of this stuff. And I was just like so school brain about it. And also just excitement and like learning something new and, you know, getting re-inspired with art and stuff. Like, I think that was a big transition for me, especially like my senior year. I started dropping down classes the more serious, you know, I was able to tattoo, you know, the more privileges that my boss allowed me to have, the more I was able to drop off at school and, you know, other commitments that I had, so I could focus more on that, you know? Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about the challenges of like packing up and like moving across the country. I mean, I feel like it's even like in some way it's like harder than college. 'Cause obviously like our studio, we have like a pretty like, it's pretty structured there. Like we have like a way we do things, but like it's like in college, you've got a definite place to live. You've got like a definite schedule, but like with this, it's like moving for a job.
Yeah. It was,
you had to find a place to live.
Yeah. I was staying, with my parents, like during my apprenticeship, which was super awesome of them to let me stay there. But moving out was like tricky, and like getting an apartment, 'cause I had never done anything like that before. It was like, you know, I had furniture that I had to pack up into like the U-Haul and then like getting everything moved down there. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, for sure. And didn't you have hadn't you like just signed a lease in Georgia or something?
No. So I was going to plan out. I was planning to move out in with one of my friends. Yeah. And it was like I had signed a lease, but it was like one of my friends. So it was like, you know, whatever. And I didn't wind up moving there after I got the job. So I had signed a lease, and then it was like a week later I got the job, and I was like, hey, listen, like, actually, David's brother wound up taking it.
Oh,
so David wound up taking my lease, or David's brother wound up taking my lease. So that's how I got out of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so how was that, leaving your family and starting over in a new state? Not starting over, but you know.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. And starting over, I mean, I think that's kind of the word for it, because I had to rebuild like a whole clientele and stuff.
Yeah.
But leaving the family was the biggest part, because they've always been like my biggest supporters and the people that I, you know, just go to get my cup filled and whatnot. Yeah. So, but I still call them like every single day. I see them whenever I can. They were flying down here a whole lot last year. So it was like, I think I was telling you, it was like every month I had someone from my family who was able to fly down and see me. So
for sure. And you know, as somebody who just went to the wedding, Taylor's family is like definitely like the one of the closest I've seen and like been able to be a part of. So like, I know for you particularly, like leaving them was like extra hard. Yeah, for sure. I think which is what we were saying in the beginning, just having someone here who knows me personally has made the biggest change in the world. Because being apart from all of those people, like it was kind of hard last year, you know? Yeah. Well, talk more about it. Well, I mean, I kind of feel like I went into a zone of working like kind of autopilot-y, where it was like, you know, wake up, get ready, go to work, talk to someone on the phone, you know, go back. And so it was like my clients, I mean, honestly, like my clients and you guys really saved me through that, where I felt like I had someone that I could talk to, that I could make some sort of connection with. But it was the waking up and going home part, and then not doing anything on my days off except for grocery shopping and cleaning. Like, I just kind of felt like I went into a little bit of like a darker spot for a second there. Yeah. But yeah, then since David's moved down, like I've been so excited about everything. Yeah. Like just, I mean, work,
which I was so excited beforehand just because it was like something I got to do. But like now I don't know why, but I'm so excited to come to work. And I'm like, I'm going to do a good tattoo today, you know?
Do you guys do everything together, like go grocery shopping together and stuff?
No, David's been doing most of the grocery shopping. So
nice.
He's also been cooking me dinners. And he presents them in a very fanciful way.
Yeah, I've seen that on your Instagram story.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I can see how coming home to somebody, you know, definitely would have helped you out a lot.
For sure. For sure.
And I remember like when you guys were doing the long distance thing, like even he wasn't even in the same. I mean, obviously Georgia's in a different time zone, but he spent some time in Europe too, right?
Yeah, he was in Germany for a second. So, which that one, it was only for how long were you there? Like 3 weeks.
Okay.
So that one was a little tricky because it would be like totally different time zones. We'd maybe talk once a day, you know, because either I'm at work and, you know, or I'm off work, but he's asleep, and then he's off work, but I'm asleep. So that one was a little hard, but we would normally talk like once a day, at least on the phone, whether it's to or from work for either of us.
Yeah.
And then we would be able to see each other like once every 2 to 3 months for like a weekend, just because both of our work schedules and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys made it.
We made it. We're here.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I want to back up like all the way like to your childhood.
To my childhood.
Yeah. So you grew up in Atlanta, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Ohio, and then we moved a whole lot when I was little, but we moved to like Georgia, Atlanta. It's like a little bit outside of Atlanta, but still like a nice 20-minute, 30-minute drive.
Yeah.
And then we moved there when I started kindergarten.
Gotcha.
So most of what I remember is Georgia.
Yeah. So did you have any like art background growing up, or did you do anything artsy or?
Yes. So my dad is an artist. He does like, he wanted to do comic book design when he was younger.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So he applied to a couple different things like during college to see if he could like get on the art path, which I think also is played into why he was so excited for me to tattoo.
Yeah,
And he was like, dude, chase it. Cause I think he's maybe regretted it a little bit, you know, just not being able to do the thing that he was really excited about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's an artist. And then my grandmother painted a whole lot. You know, my other grandmother was also a painter. My mom does interior design. My sister's a graphic designer. Like there's so much art packed into our family. And we used to like all draw, you know, growing up. Our basement, Georgia has basements. Our basement.
Yeah, this is a basement focused podcast in case
exactly.
you didn't know.
But yeah, he changed our whole basement into like this
Was it
art
scary?
side. No. Okay. Well, kind of. Well, I mean, a little bit. I'll tell you after the podcast. I feel like it's a little weird to put in here, but yeah. So he changed half of the basement into like our art room.
Cool.
So it was like we had 4 desks for me and my 3 siblings.
No way, that is
dope. And
yeah.
we would go down there. It was unfinished, so half of it was. So we would like roller skate down there, and we'd paint on the walls and draw all over our desks. And even now, it's not the desks anymore, but they have all of our pictures like hung up. It's like my mom's gallery wall.
Yeah.
So all of our
so
pictures
cute.
from like 6 to like where we are now are all hanging up in the basement.
Yeah.
So
And so you've got an older sister.
yeah, I've got an older sister, and then I've got 2 younger brothers that are twins.
Gotcha. And they all did art stuff growing up?
Kind of. So my sister did, my younger brother Bennett did, and then the other one, William, he was not really much of an artist.
But he had a desk.
But he had a desk. He has done, we always joke about him, it's paper mache.
Nice.
The best at paper mache.
Nice.
Best I've ever seen. So, but he's definitely math kid.
Gotcha.
Like he went, which is kind of an art in like its own form. Like I remember coming home after work a couple of times and seeing William like sitting there with a headlamp on, like at 2 a.m.
No way.
Oh yeah. 2 a.m. like at like the kitchen table with chalk, and he's like scribbling down all of these equations, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm
That
like
is
sitting
so
there
wild.
like just kind of talking to him. He's like, I figured it out. He's like, X equals BYZ times blah, and he starts going off, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means, but like it's
Wild.
so cool to watch his brain work, you know?
Yeah, that is really cool.
So
Yeah.
artsy in his own way.
So you basically like lived in the whole, like in that same house, like your whole time growing up?
Yeah, for sure. It was one big art house. Literally all of us did art.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you know, obviously you're very artsy with your tattoos, but I feel like you're you have a really good eye for like just like design in general, like interior design, like even the way your Instagram page is laid out, like you have all these ideas. And
oh my gosh, the Instagram page during my apprenticeship. I was talking to James about this, the photographer, the other day, and I used to have, so like the shop that I worked at was like blood red.
Yeah.
And it had like guns and like deer heads on the wall and like prison bars, and I was like
totally in line with your style.
Totally in line with my style.
Looks really good in the tattoos.
And I was like this little 17-year-old girl in like my church dress, and I'm like, trying to present my tattoos as good as I could, to kind of get it out there, because the tattoos themselves, questionable. So I wanted to make it look as good as possible. So I trekked like all of my clients down to like, there was a Tidal Max.
Yeah.
And it was like a good solid walk, and it had a white wall with a little bit of dirt on it because it was outside, but it would do. And I'd bring out a piece of paper, like a white sheet of paper. And if my client had a friend, I'd give them a piece of paper, and we'd use it to like block the sun.
No way.
And like diffuse the light so we wouldn't get any glare. And I would have clients come up, like they'd walk into the shop and they're like, where's the white walls? And I'm like, Tidal Max. Yeah, it's just a prank, bro.
Yeah, that's so cool. And yeah, if you go check out Taylor's Instagram, you can definitely tell exactly what I'm talking about. But I can definitely see how all those influences just shape your just eye in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mom being the interior designer, and then I think just growing up with my whole family being super artsy, like, I don't know, I think it feels so weird saying like aesthetics. But like aesthetics became pretty big, even though I was never like Instagram influenced, but I would definitely like, me and my mom would play games like basically designing a corner. We had David play the game last time he was here. Like we would leave him in the corner and we're like, okay, like here are your objects, do something really cool with it.
Really? That's like a thing you guys did?
Yeah,
no
for
way.
Sure. We would just play like fun, like interior design games, or like if we were in church, we would do like little scribbles. And then we'd have to turn the scribbles into art, because
so
we were
cool.
kids and we didn't want to listen. So we'd just like doodle.
Do you think any of that stuff like carries over into your tattoos specifically? Or your style?
Let me think. That's a good question.
Yeah,
I'm sure it does somewhere.
Yeah, just when you said like aesthetics, like, I think definitely your tattoos are super aesthetically pleasing, and just like
Thanks.
Designing them for like the person.
Yeah, I feel like definitely in a weird, obscure way, like the interior design one definitely helped me with like my flow of like the florals specifically. Like I remember one of the key like interior design roles is like groupings of 3. Mm-hmm. And so I would do like a lot of like any of my leaf clusters, they're all groupings of 3. If I'm doing flowers, it's groupings of 3 or 1, any odd numbers pretty much, So like stuff like that, or like when I walk into the room, like I look at the flow of the room. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I want things to flow up into this corner and then back down. And I do that with anatomy too.
Yeah,
so when I'm looking at like shoulders or biceps, and I'm like, okay, well, we want it to flow into this curve. And then, like it's a weird thing. And I'm not really sure how to explain it, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we'll get into your style a little bit more in a little bit. But so I just want to go back to like your childhood. Like did you take like any official art classes or anything like that?
I would take like school art classes, and I really enjoyed them. I like all throughout elementary, it was my favorite one. I would come home and I get very stuck on things. Like I don't know why. Like if I play a game, like that's the only game I want to play. Sure. Like I don't really want to vary. And I painted a hummingbird, right? And it was like the first painting that I did, and I thought it came out really cool.
How old were you?
6 or 7. Yeah. And I gave it to my mom. I think it's still hanging in her bedroom.
That's awesome.
But for the next like 6 months, I just painted hummingbirds.
Really?
Yeah. And I would like, none of them came out as good as the first one, but I would keep giving my mom, I'm like, look, I did another one. I think eventually she probably got tired of it because we only have the first one. She was like,
don't ask her where the rest are.
It's enough hummingbirds, Taylor. But yeah, so I did that, just kind of growing up. And then also my dad would sit down with us and he would do little art classes with us. And then throughout elementary school, throughout middle school, art class was like my favorite thing. And then I'd played lacrosse my whole life. And then in high school, lacrosse got really serious. So I still took art classes. Yeah. I was just really focused because I thought my future was lacrosse. Yeah. So I was like really focused on lacrosse, but still took art like, at least 2 times a semester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I remember the thing about when you emailed too, you basically like talked about all the shit that you were doing, and it was like, no, but I was actually like super impressed by it, because it was literally, I mean, you were doing your apprenticeship, obviously, which if you've listened to the show, you know how hard apprenticeships are. And you were in all these, you know, AP classes, art, you're a nanny, like doing lacrosse.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I was working at Waffle House too at the time.
Yeah. Like,
it's crazy.
how?
How?
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know why. Because it's funny, I'll work like 5 days in a row now, and I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, but then it was like, I wake up at 5:30 and I do my one-on-one trainings and I do my workouts. And then it's like, okay, well, now I'm at school. And I go to school and, you know, AP classes, you know, any kind of homework I would do like at lunch, like any kind of stuff like that. If I had breaks, I would also draw because I was in my apprenticeship. And then I would leave that. I had dropped one of my classes, right? So I was just taking the 2, and then I had basically a TA, so like a teacher's assistant.
Yeah. And
she would let me draw or catch up on homework in there. And then if I didn't have to draw or catch up on homework, she would let me leave. And I would either leave to Waffle House. It wasn't like all in the same day.
Yeah.
So it would kind of like change.
Okay.
So it was either to Waffle House and then nannying, or it would be to my apprenticeship, or it would be to Waffle House and then apprenticeship. So it was like that, and then, or it would be like Waffle House, and then I've got to go to practice for lacrosse. And then I would leave lacrosse and then go to the apprenticeship. But it was like, if I get like an hour of free time, I'm like, I need to be doing something.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, I'm like, I can't just rest. Like, I have XYZ on my plate. I've got to do homework. I've got to do my drawings for my apprenticeship. I have to do, you know, scheduling. I haven't caught up on that in a second. I've got, you know, so it was like this crazy moment. And then eventually, like, kind of what I was saying before, like the more responsibilities the tattoo shop would give me, the more I was able to kind of drop back on that. So I got to the point where I quit lacrosse, which was, you know, really hard for me to do. And then I also dropped down all of my AP classes to just like basic on level classes.
Yeah.
So I had 2 classes that were just like easy kind of blow off things. And I took one of them online. So I was only in like school for maybe an hour and a half a day.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know?
Wow.
Yeah. And then I would leave directly from there to my apprenticeship. And that was like my last semester senior year. It was just like an hour of school, and then I'd go to the shop all day.
Yeah, that's a really cool situation. That's cool that you like manipulated your schedule to like be able to focus more on tattooing.
I definitely became best. So I was the TA for the assistant principal.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Which was like my best friend, and she got me like free parking, like all shout out Lucia Pool. But she gave me like so many things, and her like letting me leave early too. Like she literally just gave me teacher's assistant, which I had art that semester. That's what she wound up dropping me to be a teacher's assistant so I could leave to the tattoo shop.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's when you said that thing of like if you had any free time you were like drawing. I remember like when I was in college, I was a music major, and I remember I would specifically lay out my schedule to where if I wasn't in class, I was like in a practice room. And if I did have like 30 minutes or like an hour, like it was to eat. So I purposely like structure my days so I like did not have any free time. And I don't think that's like sustainable, but I feel like it did like really make me appreciate like when I did have free time to do stuff. So like I'm sure nowadays. And then there was a
second like now where you're like, well, I have a whole day off.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, this is so wild.
It's wild. Well, so back up a little bit. So I know you said you kind of like happened into your apprenticeship. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
So.
And how old were you? Or like what? This was your senior year, I guess?
This was my senior year. I was 17? It was the guy I nannied for. So I was 15 when I started nannying for him. And I think I was 17 when I started my apprenticeship. So it was Halloween and 2017, 2018, something like that. And I was going to a theater. I was also in theater. So I was doing makeup for that. Crazy.
What were you not in?
I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. But we had a Halloween party. And I was telling David about this the other day. Like I used to get really excited about like any kind of party I could go to because I was so busy. I never had time to socialize. And I always just would get so excited that I would plan it, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't have a costume, but I had like striped pants, you know, and I knew how to draw. So I drew like a whole sleeve on my arm and I put on my...
Like a tattoo sleeve?
Yeah, I've got pictures of it.
Badass.
But it's funny, my mom told me, she was like, hey, you should take pictures of this in case you become a tattooer one day.
No way.
Yeah. So I've got pictures of it on my phone.
Yeah.
But so I drew this whole thing, went to the party, you know, came back, was passing out candy. I ran into my boss's wife and their 2 children. You know, I'm talking to them and she's like, oh my gosh, like, did you draw that? And I was like, yeah, like, happy Halloween.
Yeah.
And she was like, you should totally talk to Dusty, like, he's a tattooer, he owns his own shop. And I was like, yeah, well, think about it, and in my brain, I'm like, my plate is so full already,
absolutely.
But I'm like, yeah, I'll think about it. She leaves, and I kind of go in, and I'm talking to my mom, like, is this something I should do? Like, I love art. I don't really know what I want to do outside of lacrosse. Like, this would be really cool for me. And she was like, yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, maybe, but like, you also have free college, so do that. And then I talked to my dad about it, and this is why I say he's
free
the one.
college, like, how'd you...
Scholarships.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wound up talking to my dad about it, kind of telling him the story too. And that's when I was telling you, he was like, hey, it's an open door.
Yeah.
If it's something you're excited about, if it's something you want to do, you should at least try.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I talked to Dusty, and I was in the shop the next week.
No way. So did you show him like your portfolio?
No.
Or anything?
No. He didn't ask for
Really?
any of that. He was like...
Did he see your arm?
No. So, nope. None of that.
So he just like took your wife's word for it.
Yep.
Like, hey, she's badass.
He
at
was like,
drawing.
hey, I talked to Stephanie, here's the deal. Here's what this would look like, you know, let me know.
And what was the deal?
The deal was you get into this apprenticeship. You'll be tattooing in the next 2 years. It's a 2-year thing. It's $5,000. And then you buy all of your own equipment. If you leave early, it's an extra $5,000 because, he invested into you for those years and he wants to be compensated in some sort of way, So that was kind of it. And I went home and I had saved up enough money from nannying for him and also from Waffle House that I could do it. And I was like, yeah, let's deplete the bank account and go tat, So.
Yeah. All right. Well, so tell me about like your apprenticeship, like day one, next week.
Day one, I remember it was after school. So I had school that day.
And so I guess he was cool about your school schedule.
Yeah. He was super lenient with me. Like,
so what were like the hours like?
The hours, so they kind of changed like after school, but while I was in school, it was right after school as soon as I could be there.
Yeah.
Until about 10.
Yeah.
Because I got to sleep and I've got homework. So he would let me kind of leave early at like 10. And then after school finished, I was there from 10 a.m. to whenever the last person walked through the door.
Yeah.
So there were plenty of nights where I was there till like 2, 3 a.m., and just grinding it out, After I started building up my clientele and I was working throughout the entire day, then it became like a money quota I had to meet. So it was like, I'm guessing, I can't really remember, but it was probably like $800.
Okay.
And it was like, take on, enough clients. If you've reached that quota, you can leave or you can stay.
Gotcha.
So I was probably working like 10 to 6.
So were you tattooing like right away?
I was tattooing like within a month.
Oh,
he
really?
gave us a list of things. It was like a clock with an eyeball like in it. And then.
Oh, like designs?
Yeah.
Or like tattoos?
Yeah. Well, designs. So we had to like draw it. That's what I was doing in school. Like when I said I was drawing on my off time, he gave us
so
like,
you had like homework.
Yeah, it was like a 15 thing list, and we bring it up to him. We're like, hey, like, is this good? He's like, yeah, it's good. Or no, you need to shade here. Like this wouldn't work in a tattoo because of this. And I'd be like, okay, go home, redo it, and kind of went through that pretty quick. So I was tattooing in like a month.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And when you say we, like, were there like more apprentices?
Yeah. So we had the owner, and then we had 7 apprentices, 6 or 7, and then that was the whole shop.
Wow.
So the apprentices were pretty much the other artists.
Yeah.
Just cranking it out.
And tell me about like the shop.
The shop, like I said before,
Besides
with
the
like the
walls,
Instagram,
yeah.
I was a little bit just kind of grungy straight shop kind of thing, which, I didn't know other tattoo shops existed. So I was just like, rock on. I'm a tattooer, I don't know. They had, everything was red. And then they had black leather couches, I don't know. What exactly do you mean by telling me about the shop?
Yeah,
You
said it was like grungy.
Yeah, they had
like
the grungy.
shop,
they
I'm
had
assuming.
swords. They had like ice clients would tip him swords. You
Really?
know? Yeah, like if they're
that's
like,
kind of cool.
yeah, right. Imagine being tipped a freaking sword, dude.
Yeah.
You're like, nice tat. Here you go. Knight you on your way
so
out.
Confused if somebody was paying out for their tattoo at Eden. They're like, oh yeah, and I got I just have something for Taylor. Like, can I take it to him? Like, yeah, sure. And then like walk back in, they got a fucking sword. I'd be very confused.
I mean, I'd be thrilled. I would be so excited.
Yeah, you'd have to find some place to hang it in your house.
Why not in the studio?
Or fight with
you
it.
didn't want it in Eden?
It doesn't really fit the
Doesn't
aesthetic.
match. Dang it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sharp.
That's wild. So, but you learned a lot during your apprenticeship?
Yeah, I learned a good bit, and it was kind of like tough learning, like tough love kind of thing, which I think you get in a lot of street shops, you know, like they're kind of assertive with you and very straightforward, so it can feel harsh, but you know, at the end of the day, like I knew Dusty cared and he just wanted to push me, you know, so it was very like, I don't know, that tattoo is shit, you know, and you're like, oh no, I know already, like I'm already aware, what can I do better? So he had one way of teaching, and it was observation and criticism.
Gotcha.
You know, so I would go in and I'd watch him tattoo and didn't know what to ask. You know, it's like when you're in a math class or something and they give you this big long equation. You're like, I'm so lost. I don't even know what to ask you. Yeah. You know, I don't know what to ask you. What, you know, how far your needle's out or how deep you're pressing or like, you know, any of these questions. Yeah. I'm just like, okay.
Especially if you're like new to tattooing altogether.
Exactly.
Like nowadays you would know what to ask, but like, yeah, I can totally see what you mean.
But the majority of it, I think, was trial and error. You know, like we would do tattoos and you just kind of show it to him and he's like, oh, you chewed up the skin. And you're like, okay, well. Wait,
was that like in front of your client? I hope this was a photograph.
No, photograph for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, sometimes they were, Lord. But you know, he would say it a little nicer. You know, it's funny. He used to give me all the girl clients because he scared them. Oh. So he'd be like, I don't know how to talk to him. He's like, Taylor, you take him. I'm like, okay, Dusty, I got you.
He was scared of them.
Well, they were scared of him, so he was scared of them because he's like, I don't want a bad review. So he'd just give them to me. And I'm like, okay, great. I love the girlies, you know? But yeah, so he would just kind of critique it. And then I'd be like, okay, so I chewed up the skin. How do I not do that? You know? And he'd be like, well, just watch me. I'm like, okay, you know, and I'd watch him and, you know, great things, but I don't know how to do it, you know? So I just kind of went knowing I chewed up the skin. Okay, well, be lighter, you know, do it less.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So trial by fire with little criticism bumps here and there to help me out.
Gotcha. So you started tattooing like in a month. Like what kind of stuff were you tattooing at the beginning?
Anything.
Just anything that walked into the
Again
door?
With David's brother. David's brother was like my third tattoo ever.
Nice.
Nice. I did like the very start, I think the first week I tattooed like 4 crosses. Like it was like the nail cross, and then his brother got the paint stroke crosses, and then you're like your normal, like there were just a lot of crosses that I was doing. I did
cross tattoo artist.
Cross tats. You know, that's how I go. But anything that really walked through the door. And then because I was in high school, it was funny, like Dusty's always been business mindy.
Yeah.
But in like an obscure, like street tatter kind of way.
Sure.
And he's like, hey, like you're in high school, like use that. And I'm like, what? And he's like, all these people don't know crap. Tell them you're a tattooer and they'll be run into you. And I'm like, okay. So I tattooed a lot of people in my high school. Oh, yeah. Oh,
dude,
yeah.
Cool.
And it was like, it made me like cool, but like I knew like no one, the people that were coming to be tattooed by me, like I wasn't friends with beforehand. So, you know, I don't know. It was kind of like this weird in between moment where I became cool, but also like it was just because I tattooed. It wasn't about me. Dude,
isn't that a crazy thing? Like how much people, like just how cool it is when you say you're a tattoo artist, like,
right.
Yeah.
I think I've told you this before, but I kind of like go as long as I can without telling people I tattoo now.
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like immediately they're like, oh, discounts, or hey, let me tell you about all of my tattoo dreams and ideas, and which like I love to hear it, but also like I want to know about you.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
Sure. Yeah, like, well, especially like if it's like a stranger that you'll probably never see again. And I'm not even a tattoo artist, but like I won't lie, like a lot of times I just won't tell people that I own a tattoo studio. Yeah. But it's not because I like don't want them to come, but it's because I'm like at the gym in the middle of a workout. Mm-hmm. And like if people find out you're associated with the tattoo industry, it becomes like a tattoo consultation and not like a normal conversation.
You know, but sometimes it goes both ways too, because like I'll get my car towed, you know, and there's this really scary like tatted up man. Yeah. And immediately I'm like, I tattoo. You know, and then it makes me one of the cool guys. And I like fit right in and I'm like rock on. Or if I'm like in an Uber or something and the guy seems really scary, like I'll just kind of mention that I do tattoos and then immediately they're like best friends. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like we can use this.
Dude, I remember one time I was like trying to like pitch the shop. Like this is when we were looking for a location. I was like trying to pitch the shop to like this one specific landlord, and I printed out this really nice like booklet, and I like went to Office Max, used like photo paper, and I had like this, it was like a pitch deck basically. And like I was trying to get the shit out like that day. And the guy was like, oh no, we don't have time. He was like being like kind of cold to me. And then I think he like glanced at the booklet and then he saw it was like tattoos.
Yeah.
And he was real fucking cool after that. He was like, oh no, man, I think we can get it done today. I was like,
Literally.
all right. Yeah. Yeah. So I get that. Yeah. That's cool.
That's how it goes.
Did you have like people like come out of the woodwork when
Dude,
they found out you
someone
tattooed?
like DM me a couple months ago. Like there was this guy at my high school and he was like one of the popular guys, you know, and all the girls were like goo eyes over him. And he was one of the suckers I got like at the beginning where I was like, I tattooed, they're $20, you know, and he's like, sign me up.
You did $20 tattoos?
Oh yeah. For like a year of my apprenticeship, I was doing $20 tattoos day in, day out. But anyway, he DM'd me a couple months ago and he's like DMing me this really cool back piece. And I'm like, yeah, like that's awesome. You know, I'm like, I'm in Dallas now. Like, here's what's up. And he goes, sick, you know, like, how do I book? And I'm like, you know, through Egypt. And he goes, cool, like, you're still doing $20 tattoos, right?
Oh, my God.
And I was like, no, no, I'm not. Never got a response.
No.
Never. I'm like, dude.
Did he really said that?
Yeah.
The craziest thing to me about that is like when artist rates go up, it's like, dude, don't you get raises in like whatever job you do? Like if you do the same job for like a couple of years, you know, like you're probably going to get a raise too.
Or like, you can see that someone's getting better.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, like obviously you're not like
well,
just a few months into your apprenticeship.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's
wild.
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
But I still get like, anytime I go back to Georgia, like I'll get like some people from my high school who were like the cool kids that I was genuinely like scared of like social like death from them, you know, and they'll text me and they're like, hey, you're coming back. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I miss you. And I'm like, miss you too, you know, and they're like, can I get a tattoo while you're back? And I'm like, no. I'm not coming back to
I'm coming back to see my fucking
That's what
family.
I'm saying.
Like, not to work.
I got to the point where I just don't respond to those anymore. And I'm like,
for sure. Yeah,
if you want to hang out, that's cool. But you know.
Yeah. And Deanna's talked about it a lot too. Like it almost makes it like hard to get close to people because you're like, is it just that they want something from me? You know?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. When I moved here, I got really excited to go. When I was in Georgia, I used to go to like this coffee shop every single day. I got really excited to start going to like these coffee shops here. And I went to one and was excited to start meeting people and knowing people. And then I just became the tattooer. Like I probably told them, you know, I can't really remember, but now it's like anyone new comes in and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the tattooer, right? And I'm like, yeah, you know, and they'll talk to me about like tattoos and stuff, which is cool. Like I don't mind talking about tattoos, but again, I'd rather hear about you. Like, let's talk, have a conversation.
I think the funniest thing about that is like, you don't look like a tattoo artist, like at all.
Yeah.
Like with me and Deanna, it's like, we have a ton of tattoos. So people are like, oh, like who does your tattoos or whatever, like starts a conversation that way. But yeah, I mean, I guess, how do they get it out of you?
How do they get it out of,
I guess you tell them.
Or, you know, if they get my Instagram, like my personal Instagram, my tattoo Instagram is like linked. So I'll give them my personal Instagram and then I guess they just do some looking.
Whoa, I didn't know you did tattoos. Yeah.
Whoa, tats. Yeah. You know, but that is also kind of funny how I don't look like one because then when I tell someone I'm a tattooer, like it's like what?
Yeah,
you know,
that's dope.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Okay, yeah. Well, so you went from doing $20 tattoos to getting to the point where you could, you know, show us your portfolio, and you were like, we were really impressed by it, obviously. So like, tell us about nervous. Your progression there. Like,
yeah. So doing $20 tatties on all of the high schoolers I could find. And then from there, I started taking walk-ins, like probably 3 months in. So like a month in, I started tattooing like friends that I knew, family that I knew. And
so it was like you bring the clients sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like a month in and then, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then from there, I was able to start tattooing walk-ins. And the funny thing is like, the walk-ins really didn't change a whole lot. Like for my books wise, like I wasn't booking any more, any less, you know, or making more or less because my name started getting out to high schools, you know? And so different high schoolers would come and then it would get out to church groups and then all the church groups would come. So I just kind of started building this like Pinterest tattoo portfolio, you know? And
yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So it became with all of like, I don't know, the minimalist kind of girls, like, they all wanted that fine line stuff, you know, which I wasn't allowed to use. So it was like,
really?
No, not at all. I didn't start doing like fine line until I left that shop.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he started us on seven grouping for needles, you know, which is like a pretty decent line. And then we were allowed to go a little bit under than that, but we couldn't really go fine line. So I started using like a 5 grouping and
Gotcha.
doing as fine as I could with that and doing a bunch of those. So,
dude, was that so weird bringing people like that to your grungy street shop?
Yeah, it was.
And especially you, like 19 years old, wearing a sundress. I bet that was.
You know,
was
it's
super
funny.
weird.
Like the first time, like the first day, back to the first day of tattooing, I remember asking like one of the girls in my shoe, like in my school, if I could borrow their like black leather shoes because I thought it made me look like a tattooer.
No.
So I showed up in like all black with like some serious makeup on, wearing these like heeled black leather shoes, and I was like, I'm ready. And then I walked in, and it wasn't even what I was expecting. I'd never seen it until I started working there.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, you know, and they're like, are you Taylor? And I'm like, yeah, hi, you know. But yeah, it was crazy, like bringing other people in. Like I remember so distinctly, I was doing a bee tattoo. It was supposed to be on a mother and a daughter. And they walk in and they kind of look around after seeing all the white walls on my Instagram. They expected it to look a certain way, kind of like the shop does now, you know, like they expected it to be very like, you know, spa-like. And they walked in and saw the red and, you know, the boar's head and all of that kind of stuff. And she was like, went to the bathroom, came out of the bathroom, the mom, and she was like, honey, we're leaving.
Damn.
And I was like, well, you know, what's going on? And I'm like making the stencil, you know, getting ready to do these. And she's like, you know, this isn't what we thought it was going to be. And she just left.
Dang.
And I was like, and from there, I started getting really scared. I got in trouble for that, you know, because we didn't clean the bathroom, you know, but I was like, I don't think
that's not
the bathroom,
that's not why,
you know?
Yeah.
But that only happened once, but it put a fear in me that it would happen all the time. And I think it made me more like, I don't know, OCD about like my station in particular. Because in that studio, we had like different rooms for each artist.
Okay.
So like mine was like as clean as I could make it, as like, you know, with the red walls and the, we had, God, what is it called? It's like that metal that you see on like the back of trucks. You know what I'm talking about? With like the little diamond shapes coming up. Yeah. So we had like those on like half of the walls, and the upper half was like the red, you know.
That sounds metal as
it was
fuck.
metal as shit.
Yeah.
And we had like we didn't have lights on like the roof.
Yeah.
So each artist had to buy their own Husky light from Home Depot. So I had this red and black Husky light. And then I had my Husky toolbox that I would use, which a lot of tattooers still like they use that. So I had that, which also had the cool like diamond shaped pattern on it, you know. But I would like keep everything like as wrapped and like as pretty as I could make it, you know. And I'm like, welcome to my station.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, because that's a huge deal. Like people are already like intimidated enough walking into most tattoo shops, and especially if you're like tattooing high schoolers or like church group people. Yeah, that's definitely.
And it was like heavy metal playing in the background.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm like, welcome in, guys.
Yeah.
In my little dress.
I bet it's nice not to be in a place like that just because of
clients like that. You know, it's really cool. Like, but both are kind of cool. And I think we were talking about this the other day, where it's like the clients that because people are most important, like for me, you know. So being in that studio, like we would get some ragtag people coming in, you know. But I loved it, you know, and I loved getting to talk to them and like being able to just encourage them or like hear their stories or learn something, you know. And it was like, I don't know, just kind of cool. And then the church people come in and, you know, they're not expecting it, but they're kind of chill with it, you know, because I guess I don't look like a tattooer, so they're not intimidated by me. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah,
we'll go back into that a little bit as what you said, like helping clients.
Oh, yeah, helping clients for sure. Always loved art. Art's obviously number one. I'm going to push myself on that, but that feels a little bit more, I mean, it's business. It's a little bit business to me. And then the people are like so personal. Like I value that so much, and the different impacts that I can make on them or that they're making on me, like, which also makes me push myself in tattooing. Yeah. You know, because I'm like, okay, I know this person, I know this story. Like, you know, I'm giving you the best thing that I possibly know how to. You know, I want to make this super important for you, so you have not only a great tattoo, but an awesome experience, and you feel like you have a friend coming out, you know? Yeah,
and that's one thing that I think is so great about you, and like literally anybody that's seen your work can attest to this, but like you put such a huge emphasis on like, you know, your client interactions and like making sure the client feels special and valued and stuff like that, and they leave with like a great experience. Yeah,
I think that was like a big difference of Electric Ink too, seeing the way that some people in that shop would treat their clients with just kind of like aggression. Here's how it is, and we're not going to give you any information on why, like peer pressure-y.
Yeah.
I saw how that made the clients feel, and I'm like a super empathetic person, like big empath. So I tried really hard to be the exact opposite of that, to the point where I'm like, you know, what's going on? And can I do this? And like, you know, are there any little changes? Well, I'm going to leave the room while you stare at it, so you don't feel like the pressure of me looking at you over your shoulder. And then you let me know, you know, like going super extra mile. Maybe to overcompensate for like the look of the shop, maybe to make them feel more comfortable, you know, but for sure.
Well, so talk a little bit about the difference. And I know, you know, we talked about it before, but the difference between, you know, the clients you had back there when you were doing walk-in tattoos and like the clients you have now that where it's like one a day, like sometimes one every 2 days.
Yeah, it's funny. Like here and a little bit there, but mainly here I can normally walk out to the front and kind of point out my client. Yeah. Because my tattoos have gotten, I guess, that specific towards people where it's like, you know, they might not have a whole lot of tattoos, or, you know, they just kind of look a certain way. And I'm like, oh, you know, I know what's up. But then there it was like, you know, I'm taking anything I could, you know, so it was like until like the last probably couple months of my apprenticeship, like it was all around the world. Like I had some guy drop his Coke bag like out his pocket while I was tattooing him, or I would take, you know, people walking in with blindfolds on me, like, I'm getting a surprise tattoo, and it's like a peach pussy. Wow. And I'm like, okay, you know.
So how'd you get to start doing like the fine line stuff? If you went from like taking everything, like no fine line tattoos allowed, like how'd you start to get into that
No
stuff?
fine line tattoos allowed. You know, I think what started it in a weird way, I really liked doing script, but not like, you know, just little script, like the big chunky bold.
Oh, like lettering?
Yeah, like full blown lettering. And I was really excited about it because that was like the only times I was able to use like a 3, because it was like any like weird tiny like swoops or details around the chonky lettering. And that's what I got really excited about, or like just making the line super straight or super curved. Like I just really fell in love with line work from that. And then after there were a few times where like guys would get a little touchy with me, you know? So I would take on, in my booking, you know, I can't control walk-ins, but in my booking, I was taking on less and less guys. And then I found out that the styles, you know, that did and didn't hit, like I started moving more towards, you know, the style that I do now, which is that lacy kind of floral stuff, you know?
Oh shit, because dudes were being creepy
with
you?
Because dudes were being creepy with me. Fuck. So I was like, you know, how do I not tattoo as many guys as possible? Yeah. Which, you know, now we all know, like, I tattoo guys here and there, and I haven't gotten anything weird. But I think just in that shop, at that specific clientele, like it damaged right across the forehead, damaged me. So I was like, you know, starting to move into that, and didn't know how to make it look all airy, you know, because I wasn't allowed to use like fine lines at that shop. So I was using a 5, and then I would use gray wash, which was just not good at all.
Oh, for lining.
Yeah, for lining. Because I was like, how do I make this look like lighter, like not as chonky? So I started using like light grays, which just looks like you've got a half lasered off tattoo.
Jeez,
you know? And after I left that shop, I was able to rework a lot of those, but there was a time of trying to figure it out, you know, or just doing more and more negative space until I got there, you know?
Damn.
Yeah.
Man, well, that's so horrible. I'm so sorry you had to like go through that experience.
You know what? It was good. It gave me almost a backbone, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it taught me a lot. You know, I didn't realize that stuff like that happened until I started working there, and I was just like, oh, this is all made up, you know? Or like there was a lot of like underlying sexism in that shop, and it wasn't necessarily because of the people there, but a lot of the clients were that way, like, you know, what are girls doing here? Like, I can't be tattooed by a girl, you know? And it was like,
really?
Yeah.
Dang.
Oh yeah. Or let alone a girl with no tattoos. Yeah. Like it was crazy. Or like the owner's dad was a little silly with that. Like he wouldn't, you know, look at me. He would come and he would teach all of the other guys, you know. He was an old tattooer, and he would teach everyone else, but he wouldn't talk to me or look at me, you know. And it was just like, you know, what do you do having like a girl in here, you know? And Dusty would stand up for me, you know, which was nice. But, you know, stuff like that where I'm like, I feel very excluded from your cool boys club, you know, like I want in. So
dang, that's so wild. And I know like Deanna's talked about it, like, you know, being subjected to, or like just having issues because she's a female in the tattoo industry, you know, in her apprenticeship. And it's something that, you know, I don't think about very often, honestly, because like, obviously, you know, Deanna and I own the studio, and most of our artists are female. I mean, we just got like a couple like male resident artists like as our first one. So it's definitely something that like, I don't even think about, like the fact that could even be a thing. Like you could even have issues with that. So
I don't know if like clients know it too, but like I will have a lot of clients who come up to me and they're like, this is crazy. Is this an all female shop? Like I chose this shop because it was female owned, and you know, you've got all female tattooers, and it's like, well, we got some guys, but like the fact that it stands out to them too, like for me at least, like working for, you know, you and Deanna, was like seeing all of the girls in the shop. I was like, rock on, you know?
And I'm sure like they want to support like female owned businesses, but I bet like a big part of it is just like a comfort thing, like walking into our studio as opposed to like walking into, you know, a street shop or like where you're worried about, you know, grungy and dude tattooers.
You hear about those like creepy stories with like guys who take advantage of, or I mean, I'm sure there are girls too, but the guys who take advantage of their clients too, you know, and you're like, some sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's interesting now that, you know, like your clientele is like pretty much like predominantly, well, really as a whole, like I feel
I think the florals, since I've been here, I've probably tattooed like 3 guys with my florals, which now like it's weird because it like didn't flip flop completely, but like I love when guys rock like my flowers.
I think it's badass.
Like I feel like it looks so freaking cool. And like anytime I get a guy client where it's like getting my flowers, one, if they're getting like this lacy, like, you know, floral tattoo, like usually my clients, like my guy clients, are super cool, you know, and they're just like, if you're going to rock that, like you're really cool, you know? So it also kind of helps in that way. I don't know. I don't know, which was the same in like Atlanta. Like I would do like flowers on guys, like my style, and they were always just really chill. But if I started doing like something else, then, you know, here and there, I'd get like a weird client. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I used to, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Like the florals just like attract like cool clients.
But it was funny, like rewinding, like before I would start all of this, back to like when guys would get gross and touchy, like I used to sit down with my dad and like game plan how to not make that happen. Like I'd come home like another week and I'm like, hey, Dad.
That's so horrible that's even a thing.
I'm like, got gropeyed again. And he's like, okay, well, you know, where was the tattoo? I'm like, on their forearm. What did they do? You know, they copped a feel of your knocker, you know? And he's like, okay, so what if, you know, you make them put it in a fist, and it's totally lying, but it's like, you know, let's have them put it in a fist and say you've got to clench to make your forearm tighter so the tattoo goes in better, so they wouldn't do that.
That is so, you know? I'm like, that's so horrible that's even a thing, that like a conversation that you had to have with your dad.
I feel like I like shoved it in a box. Like I disassociated myself. It must seem like so
long ago now. I mean, obviously, and I'm not like trying to brag or anything, but like I cannot imagine anything like that like ever happening at our studio. And if it did, like, dude, that person would be out the door like
that was the funniest thing, because like at that studio, it was like, it was so common, like it was so normal. And if I talked about it, it was like, okay, the common like rule of thumb is like make it hurt more and charge more for it, you know? And it was like, that was it. So like any other shop I've been in,
dude, that is so
where I'm like,
fucked.
hey, you know, this happened. That's everyone's reaction. They're like, that's so fucked. And now I'm like, yeah, that was real messed up, you know?
But at the same time, to you, like if that's the only shop, you're
that's
like,
the only shop I knew.
Okay, well, this is just how it is. I just gotta,
and it was like, we don't want to get a bad review. I don't want to lose my tip. You know,
because
like
somebody fucking groped you and you called them out.
And I'm like, that feels wrong of me to leave them with a half done tattoo. Like I should at least finish it, you know. But I would hide little penises in them.
No, really?
Yeah, I would do like that gray wash where it comes out almost black, and then I would take my black ink and hide little dicks in their tattoos.
Way.
So then when it healed up, the dick would be there loud and proud, but when they walk out the door, they wouldn't know.
That is wild.
So it was make it hurt like more, charge more, and hide little penises on them for being such a dick.
I'm so sorry that you had to experience that. That's horrible.
That's okay.
Well, aside from wanting to tattoo, you know, more girls, is there anything that got you into like doing more of the fine line stuff?
I feel like also I was immediately attracted to it. I think that kind of light lacy style, like if I were to get tattooed, that's something I would get.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just kind of drawn to it in that kind of aspect too, where I'm like, I would get this, so I want to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
One thing that I think is cool about your style is it's like, it's such a different look. And I feel like it's like really like, it's just really aesthetically pleasing. And it's, you know, we kind of have said it before. It's like almost like tattoos for people who don't want
Yeah.
tattoos. And it's like, it's not that, but like, it's like, you know, you just did an awesome sleeve over 2 days on a client. And like that girl has like a full sleeve now. And it's like, she doesn't look like heavily tattooed or anything like that. So
yeah,
it's just,
for sure.
And it's a really cool style. And obviously your clientele is like predominantly female, but it's also like a lot of people that you would never
that don't
like,
have tattoos either,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
their
or like
first
you were saying
tattoo.
earlier, like moms, you know, or like young girls,
Yeah.
like it's just kind of like
it's,
this delicate little lace on you
Yeah.
at all times.
I think
know?
it's really cool. And it's, and anybody can rock a tattoo like that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of one of the cool things about where the tattoo industry is going. It's just becoming like accessible to so many people, like socially to have tattoos. But also as the styles expand and you have a different variety of stuff out there, like there's little flavors for everyone, you know,
Oh
if you
yeah.
want a tattoo,
I feel
it's
like we're coming on to the point where like any style that's in art is now coming into tattooing.
yeah,
You know, it's like literally anything is possible that you're seeing in art. Like, you know, any kind of like abstract stuff, it's going on. You know, any kind of color realism, it's happening. Any kind of like stipple work, it's happening. You know, like anything you can see in a painting, like it's being done. Obviously, it's being changed to like flow with your body. It's not a white canvas, but I feel like you can mimic any of those styles now.
yeah. So when did you start doing like the freehand stuff specifically?
Also in my apprenticeship. Also, so I was by the end of it, because I was trying to meet that like quota because I still had other things I needed to do. So I would just way overbook myself.
Yeah.
Like super fast. And I didn't have an iPad. So anything that I was doing, it would have to be like drawn and then traced onto the stencil paper and then doing this, you know, like it was this whole process that would take so long. So I started like freehanding
Yeah.
to make it quicker, and I would just like draw it on with Sharpie and then tattoo over that. And, you know, obviously art has changed. They're not where I am now, but, you know, I wouldn't do anything that I didn't think was my best work at that time.
Yeah.
But they're not where I'm at now, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, you've had
But
double
yeah.
the experience.
They were definitely like just a time saver at that point in my career.
Yeah. Well,
Now it's different.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, it's still freehanding now, but like, I feel like the distinct style that you have, you know, we've kind of dubbed it like the freehand floral flow. Like,
Yeah.
when did you start doing that?
I mean, slightly before I came here, because I knew I wanted to do that when I was here. So after I left that shop, I did bunches of guest spots just throughout, and I met Minton, who used like tight threes and like singles, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
How do you do that? You know, so he kind of started showing me, and once I got comfortable with like the type 3, like the liners, then I started attempting like the freehand florals at, you know, other shops and trying to figure out how to do that. And it's
was it
funny.
as large scale or was it just
No,
like,
they started like probably palm size or like maybe 2 hands. You know, I had
Yeah.
a bunch where, you know, the people that I was touching up from like tattooing them with gray, you know,
Yeah.
like while I was touching them up, I would also freehand because I had changed. I mean, it was probably like a year in between tattooing them. So I would add leaves, I'd add flowers, you know, that kind of stuff. But it was weird because it changed from like drawing on to save time to like drawing on because I can't do it on an iPad and stencil
Yeah.
it on you the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, anatomy, like that became a huge thing, not just like, oh, I've got to save time on this because I've got another tattoo coming
gotcha.
in an hour, you know?
And I think, well, I remember the first time you did the freehand stuff at our studio.
Yeah.
I remember it was like, you were doing like a half sleeve or something like that. And I think that you forgot your iPad for the day. And I might not have even been there, but I just remember seeing that tattoo and James saying like, yeah, she like just freehanded all that on. I was like, and it was so awesome. I was like, dude, that's fucking badass. Like this 20-year-old just comes in here and fucking freehands that whole thing and does a badass.
Yeah,
like,
I came here like...
I was like, damn, that was fucking cool.
Thanks. I came here so excited because so we started taking on like maybe 1 client a day. You know, I still had my hourly at the start, but there were some days where I was just taking on 1 client. And I was really excited to like do it on my iPad and just spend a lot of time because I was drawing everything beforehand, you know? And I was so excited to draw everything on my iPad. And then I started like stenciling on them and I realized it didn't look the same.
Yeah.
Even if I took a picture of their arm, even if I drew over their arm on the iPad and stenciled it out, it didn't flow with their body the way I wanted it to. So,
and that's a super interesting point. So, you know, a lot of people, myself and Nicole, you know, we handled the inquiries for Taylor. I handled all of them for a long time. You know, you have a lot of people asking, well, like, you know, can I do a consultation beforehand? Like, can I see the design beforehand? Or like, you know, normal tattoo questions. And it's so unique with your style because it really is so dependent on like their specific bodily anatomy. So you have a lot of tattoos that look similar, but you know, they're literally custom to all those people in the moment. I think it's like just fascinating. It's so cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
Can you talk about, like, especially for me, I'm not an artist. Can you talk about any like specific things that, like, when you're freehanding, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this to match this part of their arm?
Yeah. So
just like an example.
Kind of weird interior design stuff, like the talk about threes.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a big one. Your kind of standard rule of thumb is like things facing inwards towards your body. So most of my flowers, it's either facing up towards your head or in towards your stomach.
Yeah.
So like those are kind of things that I do. I like to do the flowers on like centers of muscular groups. So like you'll have one like right where that shoulder's hitting your next muscle, and I'll do one up there, and then I'll do one right on your bicep. And then any kind of crevice, it's kind of like contouring like your face, like makeup stuff.
Okay.
So your darks go in like the areas that you want to contour in. So like to make your muscles appear like bigger or something, like I will go into like that little muscular group and do like my dark leaves, you know, to help shape the arm and make it, you know, I don't know, flow with your body as best as possible and contour your body kind of like makeup, and also highlight your body with like the centers, like the negative space of the flowers where the highest points on your muscles are going to be, like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you enjoy doing that style now? I know it was kind of like born out of like necessity and like.
Yeah, born out of necessity, but like, I don't know. I love it. Like there's so much different like options that I can choose from. Like I am constantly changing like leaf styles. Yeah. You know, I'm like, oh, I really like, you know, these caterpillar bites. And I'm like, oh, well, what if I do the caterpillar bites like this? Or what if I do, you know, so I'll constantly change like little tiny things. I mean, in each tattoo, I change like each little tiny thing, to the point where like in a couple months, like I do them completely different because it's constantly evolving. Yeah.
And especially because like, I mean, relatively like you're super new to doing that style. Like I mean, you pretty much just started doing the large scale stuff.
I mean, I'm pretty new to tattooing in general. I'm a baby tatter.
But like, you got to think like a few years ago, that's a big chunk of your career, you know? So yeah, it's really cool to see like how you've been constantly like developing and improving.
Yeah. I'll get really excited. I'll walk up to you and I'm like, Colton, I did the flower different this time. And you're like, what is different? And I'm like, see this one little line. I'm like, I did it different.
Yeah. And I think it's cool. Like, and we've talked about it before, but like, I think it's neat for you that you find, you know, different things besides just the art that make tattooing fun for you. You know, like, like I know for you, sometimes it's like more of a technical thing. It's like, okay, how technically perfect can I get this? I'm constantly trying to find new techniques, you know, and like lining and stuff. And I'm like, okay, like how do I do this more efficiently? Or how do I, like, I get so excited, or like I'll play around with my, you know, gray washes and I'm like, okay, this is like a 5-dropper. I'm going to do 6-drop and see how that heals up, you know, and like that kind of stuff. I get really excited. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And then I think the other thing that, you know, I can see in your work, we talked about it a little bit earlier, it's just like the way you interact with clients, I feel like is a big thing that, you know, drives you. Yeah. And I know like when I was first getting my sleeve done, that's like something that really stuck out to me, like about tattooing, is like the personal connection. And me and my artist at the time talked about it. It's like, you could paint a painting for somebody and it's like, hey, I made you this painting, and they can be like, oh, it's awesome, I love it. But like tattooing is like so personal, because not only is like somebody sitting in your chair for 8 hours and like in pain, but like they literally have to wear that around like all the time for the rest of their lives. I feel like that's a really cool personal connection with this art form specifically that, you know, you really don't get with any other. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of morbid in the way that I think, but you know, you constantly hearing like tattooing is like living art, you know, like it's art that's literally alive, which also means that it dies, which is, you know, tattoos are so permanent, but it's like to think, you know, at some point I'm going out, you know, and then at some point all of my tattoos are going out that I've ever made. Yeah. It is. And that's like morbid, but also fascinating, and also like makes tattooing less permanent. Yeah. You know, like I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not going to create something that's going to be around forever. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And then we also get into the discussion of like aside from photos, like you can't really like preserve your tattoos like you can a painting. So, oh my gosh. Yeah. But have you seen like, I mean, unless you're mummifying your body. Yeah. You know, yeah, it's wild aside from photos, which also kind of throws me off about people who
do really good tattoos. We were just listening to a podcast on this. People who do really good tattoos, but then won't take good photos of it. And it's like, you're cranking out these awesome bangers.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
yeah. Can you
know?
speak a little bit more to that, the presentation? Because I know we talked about your Instagram earlier, and, from even having to walk down to the Title Max and the white wall, that's something that when we looked at your portfolio for the first time, I mean, that really stood out to us. Even if people don't look at your portfolio and they notice specifically, okay, it's got a neutral color scheme or whatever, like, I just feel like the way you present your art nowadays, it's like that's everything right there.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're, I feel like for me specifically, like social media is the number one way of marketing, so it was really important, especially like first starting out. I'm like, okay, like, how do I get my name out there? How do I make this like look aesthetically pleasing, and it's like, okay, I focus so hard on like, how do I make my Instagram good?
Yeah.
And now moving here and doing more like the freehand floral flow, it's like, it's so tricky to photograph because it wraps around everywhere, and so it's like, me and James will sit in the photo room and we're like, okay, well, what if we have them like moving their hair behind their ear? What if we have them like this? Like, how do we show this tattoo in motion? Because I feel like that's what I think is coolest about, the tattoos I do is how it moves with you. Yeah. So it's like, how do we capture the movement of this tattoo without them just standing there and the wraps of it, Yeah,
that's so cool. And I think that's one thing that, like, just going back to that artistic eye that you have, I mean, I think that's like a skill in and of itself, is like being able to showcase your work in the best way. And James talks about it all the time. He takes fantastic photos of tattoos, but he always wants the artist back there because they know like what's going to look best with their work specifically.
Yeah.
And obviously with that freehand stuff, you've got the extra challenge of like, there's not one good angle that's not going to, because most of the time it's not on a flat surface, there's not one angle that's going to show it off. So I just think that's another level of like
with
your
editing
eye.
Too. It's like insane. Like I think me and James have like 4 presets on Lightroom for how to edit ours, which is like this whole like tricky thing because it's like you got to pull the reds out, and then it's like, okay, well, you can't pull it out because then it'll be gray, and then it's like, with a normal tattoo where you're tattooing black, like you're not seeing the red under the black.
Yeah.
But for mine with a really light gray wash, that red is so prominent.
Yeah. And can you talk about that a little bit more? Because, we tell clients all the time, like, hey, we got to edit the photo real quick. But I think it's important to distinct, like, we're not like editing like the tattoo.
We're not like changing lines on it and saying, oh, well, let me, warp this so it looks better. It's
so talk about what you mean when you say like we're going to edit the photo.
With editing the photo, it's trying to make it to look like a fresh tattoo without any of the redness in your skin. So it's, taking out the reds by pulling, the saturation down it a little bit brighter and then turn it a little bit to the orange side so it looks like skin tone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just editing that. Yeah.
Which is really, that's more true to how the tattoo is going to look anyway the next day when it heals.
The next day, for sure, the reds are all the way out, or, once it heals, the tattoo, as any tattoo, is going to be a little bit lighter, but the reds aren't going to be there. Yeah. I would have people like kind of ask, what was it? I did one and someone was like, oh, did you do this in like brown or something? Like, did you add brown to the background? Because I didn't edit the reds out. Yeah. And they thought I was using like color in my tattoo, and I'm like, no, that's just their skin.
And it's crazy too how like the background of a photo can like make your tattoo look different, which is like we encourage clients to wear like darker, more neutral clothes, but like that's, or even the
cleanliness of the background too. It's like taking a picture, like back to the apprenticeship, if I took one like just in the middle of the shop with all of the clutter and the forehead and everything in the background, it's distracting them from what you're trying to show them. Same with like if you have a bright orange t-shirt on, like it's so distracting from what you're trying to show them. So neutral colors, having a plain background, stuff like that really helps focus on the tattoo.
Yeah. And it's going to affect the way the tattoo looks if you've got a colorful shirt on or something like that. Colors are, it's all relative. So if you put a bright color next to something, it's going to change the way that you perceive that. So I think that's another super important thing about your stuff specifically. That's all black and gray, is getting that nice, neutral, clean background.
For sure.
And you said something earlier too that I thought was interesting. You mentioned, you take a lot of stuff off your Instagram. I feel like there's, either that way, or then there's people like, Deanna, for example, that she's just left everything she's ever done on her Instagram. Can you like talk about why you prefer it?
I feel like I binge my Instagram account so much just because when people look through it, and I know that I do when I like go to stalk someone's account, like I'm scrolling through all of it, you know? So kind of back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's like because I change something in every single tattoo.
Yeah.
My style has changed so much in the past 2 years. And before that, it's like in my apprenticeship trying to hone in on a clientele. You know, I don't want to be posting my, you know, neo-trad, you know, skull.
Sure.
It's like, I don't want to take on that right now.
Yeah.
So I take down the things that I don't want to do anymore, and I post more of the things that I do want to do. And if my style has changed so much from the things that I do want to do, but it's not my style anymore, I normally take those off because I don't want someone to send me a picture of that and be like, oh, but I thought it would look like this.
Yeah.
This is what I asked for.
Yeah.
And it's like, but this is how I do it now. So I normally take those off, so I don't even give people really the option to look at those and say, but I wanted this, you know?
And I'll weigh in on that. You know, you mentioned earlier, social media nowadays is everything. It's the way you market yourself. We don't really have like physical portfolios anymore. Like if you walk into our shop, there's no books that you can look at or anything like that. Like nowadays, like your Instagram, that is your portfolio right there. Yeah. So that's, you want, I just feel like I love that school of thought because you want to give people like the most accurate representation of like what a tattoo from you is going to be. And I get the other way too, you know, where people, maybe sometimes you want to show people your progression, but then you're also relying on people to realize like, okay, this was done like a few years ago. Like it's not like, going to look quite
even
like that.
The few color tattoos that I have done, like those color roses, like for a while we were getting, when is Taylor going to do another color rose? You know, and it's like, that makes it easier on you. That makes it easier on me when I was doing my booking, just to not have to say no, not give people the, here's what's in front of me, here's what I want kind of thing, you know?
For sure. Well, I know we're kind of running a little bit low on time, but what's next for you? I mean, where do you see your career going?
I don't know. I guess it depends on what's next for Eden. You know, like I can't imagine being anywhere that's not Eden. You know, you guys just offer so much things that other shops don't have. That makes me feel like I don't know. Like there's nothing else I'd want to do except for work for you guys. So y'all are the bomb.
Well, that's always nice to hear. Yeah. What about like style wise? I mean, can you see yourself like branching out, or you think you just want to keep honing in that, you know, your freehand stuff?
I love that freehand floral, but you know, here and there I get like with the seminars that we do at the shop, I'll get really inspired. And I'm like, oh shoot, I want to do black and gray here, or I want to try another color realism, you know, like stuff like that. But I don't know if any of them will stick. It might just be like here and there when inspiration strikes, I'm ready to go, you know, but I don't see myself getting tired of the freehand florals. Like I love them, and I love, you know, getting to challenge myself on them, getting to progress in them. I don't think I've reached my peak by any means, you know? Yeah. Maybe once I feel comfortable, but I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable because art isn't perfect. So yeah, for sure. And I've talked about that on the podcast before too, but especially with the freehand florals, it's like, you know, obviously no two bodies are alike. So literally you would never do any two of them the same sort of thing. I only do like 3 flowers. Like who's to say, you know, I might crank out a 4th. So Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys both. David's still here, by the way, in case you're wondering. But thank you guys both for stopping by today. It was great to have you on. If you haven't checked out Taylor's work already, definitely do that. It's at Taylor N. Phelps on Instagram. And then, if you're not following the podcast, it's at EdenBAS Pod. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.